Ever feel like your to-do list is about to eat you alive?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Because every day there's just more and more and less time to get it all done.
Right.
But what if I told you there's this idea out there that could help you cut through all that and actually make real progress on the things that matter most?
I'd be interested to hear more about that.
Well, it all starts with a rather vivid image. It involves a frog.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Where are we going with this?
It's called eating the frog.
Eating the frog.
Yeah. And the basic idea, which admittedly sounds a little crazy at first, is this. If the very first thing you do each morning is tackle your biggest, most dreaded task.
You know, the one you'd probably rather just avoid altogether.
Exactly. That's your frog. And if you can bring yourself to eat that frog first thing, then you can go through the rest of the day with this sense of, okay, the worst is behind me. What else you got?
Makes sense. It's like ripping off the bandage, right?
Yeah.
You get the hardest part out of the way, and then everything else seems easier in comparison.
Precisely. And that frog, as unpleasant as it might be to even think about, is usually the very thing that will have the biggest impact on your goals.
Because let's face it, we often spend so much time and energy on low-value tasks, things that make us feel busy but don't really move the needle.
Oh, totally. It's so easy to get caught up in that cycle of busy work and feel like you're getting things done, but at the end of the day, you haven't really made any meaningful progress on the things that truly matter.
Right. So this frog-eating idea is really about prioritizing. It's about making a conscious choice to focus on the most important task, the one that will make the biggest difference, and doing it first.
And that brings us to what we're diving deep into today. Brian Tracy's book, Eat That Frog.
Oh, this is a classic. This book has been helping people take control of their time and their lives for years.
You, our listeners, actually flagged this as something you wanted us to explore, and it couldn't be more relevant. Because let's be honest, everyone feels overwhelmed these days.
Absolutely. We're bombarded with information, deadlines, and demands from every direction.
It can feel almost impossible to figure out where to even begin.
It's like you're standing at the foot of this massive mountain of tasks, and you just freeze up because you don't know which path to take.
That's exactly what this book aims to help you with. And that's our mission for this deep dive, to really unpack the core strategies from Eat That Frog, not just to help you identify your personal frogs,
but also to give you some practical tools and techniques you can actually use.
To eat them, so to speak, without hesitation.
Right. Because it's one thing to understand a concept, but it's a whole other thing to actually implement it consistently.
Think of this deep dive as your express lane to feeling more in control, more productive, and significantly less stressed by your never-ending to-do list.
Now, one of the things that really struck me about Tracy's approach is his emphasis on the urgency of action. He's not just advocating for good ideas or well-intentioned planning. He's really pushing for doing something right now.
Yeah, he makes a really interesting point. He says that real success doesn't come from just having brilliant ideas.
It's about having clear priorities and then actually taking action on those priorities.
Exactly. And he actually uses a very specific example. He says that someone with average intelligence,
but with very clear priorities,
and the discipline to act quickly,
will almost always outperform a brilliant mind that's stuck in a perpetual cycle of planning and analysis.
That's a powerful image, and I think it's really encouraging. Because it means that even if you don't consider yourself to be super intelligent,
you can still achieve extraordinary things by simply focusing on the right things and then taking consistent action.
Now, getting into the nitty-gritty of frog eating, the book lays out a couple of really practical rules.
Yes. And the first one is very straightforward.
Yeah.
If you have to eat 2 frogs, eat the ugliest one first.
The ugliest one first. So what does that mean in real life?
It means you need to identify the most challenging task on your list. The one you're most likely to procrastinate on, the one that's really making you squirm. That's your ugliest frog.
Oh, I can feel the dread already.
But instead of pushing it aside or trying to find ways around it, you tackle it head on before anything else. Before you check your email, before you get caught up in meetings, before you even think about doing anything else.
It's like facing your fears head on, isn't it? It's acknowledging that this thing is going to be unpleasant, but you're just going to get it done and over with.
Exactly. And the idea is that once you've conquered that ugliest frog, everything else will seem easier by comparison.
It's like that saying about doing the thing you fear most first.
Exactly. And Tracy's second rule builds on this idea of taking immediate action. He says, if you have to eat a live frog, don't sit and look at it for too long.
Ooh, that's a good one. Don't just sit there and stare at the frog. Sometimes we can really psych ourselves out by just thinking about how difficult or unpleasant a task is going to be.
Right. And all that does is build up the anxiety and make it even harder to get started.
The longer you stare at it, the bigger and uglier it seems.
Exactly. So Tracy's advice is to just dive in. Don't overthink it. Don't try to find the perfect moment. Just get started.
And this is something that really successful people do. They don't waste time procrastinating or second-guessing themselves. They identify what needs to be done and they take action.
And they understand that momentum builds as you go. The first step is often the hardest, but once you get moving, it becomes easier to keep going.
Now, this whole idea of frog eating really highlights a crucial distinction, which is the difference between activity and accomplishment.
Yeah, this is so important. We can easily get caught up in doing a lot of things,
Getting super busy.
but without actually accomplishing anything meaningful.
It's like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. You're doing something, you're moving things around.
But you're not actually addressing the real problem.
Right. And that's where frog eating comes in. It's about focusing on the high-value tasks, the ones that will have the biggest impact, even if they're the most difficult or unpleasant ones to tackle.
Because ultimately, it's not about how busy you are, it's about what you actually accomplish.
And one of the most encouraging things about this whole approach is that the ability to prioritize, to overcome procrastination, to really focus on the important tasks, those aren't just innate talents that some people have and others don't.
They're skills.
Skills that you can learn and develop through practice and repetition.
And the more you practice these skills, the better you get at them.
Now think about what happens when you actually complete a task, especially a challenging one. You get this feeling of accomplishment, right?
Definitely. There's a sense of satisfaction, of relief, sometimes even a little bit of euphoria.
And it turns out there's a biological reason for that. When we complete tasks, our brains release endorphins, those feel-good chemicals.
So it's not just a psychological thing, there's an actual physiological reward system at play.
Our brains are literally rewarding us for getting things done. And the more we experience that reward, the more we want to repeat the behavior.
It creates a positive feedback loop.
Exactly. And this is what Tracy calls a positive addiction. The more you experience that feeling of accomplishment, the more you're drawn to seeking out and completing those important tasks.
And this ties directly into habit formation.
It does, because if you consistently prioritize and complete those important tasks, it becomes a habit. It becomes almost automatic.
And the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Now let's talk about the foundation of those frog-eating habits. The book talks about what it calls the 3 Ds.
Ah, yes, the 3 Ds. Decision, discipline, and determination.
Let's break those down.
Sure. So decision refers to that initial commitment. You have to decide consciously and deliberately that you're going to embrace this approach. You're going to prioritize and tackle your most important tasks first.
It's a choice you have to make.
Exactly. Then there's discipline, which is all about consistency. It's about showing up every day and doing the work, even when you don't feel like it, even when it's difficult.
Because it's not always going to be easy.
Right. There will be days when you're tempted to just give in and go for the low-hanging fruit.
But that's where determination comes in, right?
Exactly. Determination is that unwavering commitment to sticking with it, even when things get tough. It's about seeing the bigger picture and remembering why you made the decision to eat the frog in the first place.
So you've got the decision to commit to this approach, the discipline to consistently apply it, and the determination to see it through no matter what.
And those 3 Ds, they're the foundation for building those powerful frog-eating habits.
Now, before you can actually tackle that frog, you need to know what it is, right? You
Yeah.
have to be able to identify that big, important, and maybe a little scary task.
Right, and that's where chapter 1 of the book, Set the Table, comes in.
It's all about getting clarity on what you're actually trying to achieve.
And clarity is crucial, because without it, you're essentially shooting in the dark.
It's like trying to navigate through a dense forest without a map or a compass.
Exactly. You might be moving, but you have no idea if you're headed in the right direction.
And the book actually quotes Napoleon Hill here, who said that definiteness of purpose is the starting point of all achievement.
In other words, you have to know what you want before you can go after it.
It's like setting a destination before you start driving.
And this is something that separates those who achieve extraordinary things from those who just kind of drift through life.
Tracy argues that successful people aren't necessarily more talented or intelligent.
They're just more clear about what they want and how they're going to get it.
And one of the biggest obstacles to clarity and therefore to action is a lack of, well, definiteness. It's that vagueness, that fuzzy feeling of not really knowing what we're trying to achieve, how things need to happen, and why these tasks are even important.
It's easy to get lost in the weeds when you don't have a clear sense of direction.
It is. And Tracy advocates for dispelling that vagueness, for striving for greater precision, to be very specific about what you want to achieve, and to get it out of your head and onto paper. He calls it thinking on paper.
Ah, yes. And there's a fascinating statistic that he cites. Only about 3% of adults have clearly defined written goals.
3%? Wow, that's a tiny number.
It is, but here's the kicker. That small group of 3% who have written down their goals consistently achieves significantly more than the other 97% who don't.
So it's not just about having goals, it's about writing them down. That act of putting pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, that seems to make a huge difference.
It does, because when you write something down, it forces you to be more specific, more intentional. It's no longer just a fleeting thought or a vague aspiration. It becomes a tangible commitment.
It's almost like you're making a contract with yourself.
Exactly. And when you have that level of clarity and commitment, it becomes much easier to take action and to stay focused.
Now, the book lays out a 7-step goal-setting process, which is really helpful for taking those vague aspirations and turning them into something concrete.
Oh yeah, I love this process. It's so practical.
It is. So the first step is pretty straightforward. You have to decide exactly what you want.
And this is where a lot of people get stuck. They have a general sense of what they want, but they haven't really taken the time to articulate it clearly.
Right. And it's about more than just having a vague idea of, I want to be successful, or I want to make more money. It's about getting crystal clear on what that actually looks like for you. What does success mean? How much money do you want to make? By when?
And for work-related goals, the book suggests having a direct conversation with your boss.
Oh, that's smart. Because you want to make sure you're both on the same page.
Exactly. You don't want to be working hard towards a goal that isn't aligned with your organization's objectives. It's like that classic image of making sure your ladder is leaning against the right wall.
So first you decide what you want, and you make sure you're aligned with your boss if it's work-related. Then step 2 is to write it down.
As we've just discussed, this is crucial. It takes your goal from the realm of thought into the realm of action.
And step 3 is to set a deadline.
Because without a deadline, there's no sense of urgency. It's easy to let things slide when there's no specific time frame.
Right. And if it's a big goal, break it down into smaller sub-deadlines. It just makes it seem less daunting and more manageable.
Deadlines really are powerful motivators.
They are, and they give you something concrete to work towards. Step 4 is to make a list of everything you need to do to achieve that goal.
So it's like creating a roadmap.
Yeah. And you don't have to get it perfect right away. Just start brainstorming and keep adding to the list as new tasks come to mind.
It's a living document.
It is. Then step 5 is to organize that list into a plan. Think about priority and sequence.
So what are the foundational tasks that need to be completed first?
What tasks are dependent on other tasks being finished? You can use mind maps or flowcharts or just a simple numbered list, whatever works best for you.
The key is to break that big goal down into smaller, more manageable steps.
And that makes the whole thing seem less overwhelming. Now, step 6 is crucial. Take action immediately.
Yes, don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't overthink it. Just start doing something, even if it's just a small step.
Because action creates momentum. And it's the only way to actually achieve your goal.
The book makes a great point here. A moderately good plan executed quickly.
Will always be better than a perfect plan that never gets off the ground.
Exactly. And finally, step 7 is to commit to doing something every single day that moves you towards your goal.
Even if it's just a tiny step.
Even if it's just for 5 minutes, just keep that momentum going.
Make it a non-negotiable part of your daily routine.
Yeah.
Now, the book really emphasizes how powerful this process of writing down and clarifying your goals can be.
Oh, it's amazing what a clear written goal can do.
It can spark creativity, it can boost your energy, it can give you that extra push you need to keep going.
It's like having a guiding star.
Yeah.
It gives you something to focus on, something to aim for.
And to put this into practice, the book recommends a great exercise. It suggests sitting down and listing 10 goals that you want to achieve in the next year. But here's the key. You write them in the present tense.
As if you've already achieved them.
Exactly. So, for example, instead of writing, I want to lose 10 pounds, you would write, I weigh 140 pounds.
And it might sound silly, but it's a powerful way to shift your mindset and start seeing those goals as achievable.
From that list of 10 goals, choose the one that would have the most significant positive impact on your life.
And then take that goal through the 7-step process. Write it down, set a deadline, make a plan, take action, and do something every day to move towards it.
It's a deceptively simple exercise, but it can have a profound impact.
It really can.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of identifying your frogs, setting clear goals, and developing those frog eating habits. But how do we actually manage our time and energy so we can consistently tackle those big tasks?
That's where Chapter 2 comes in. Plan every day in advance.
Plan every day in advance. It sounds pretty straightforward.
It is, but you'd be surprised how few people actually do it consistently.
And this chapter really emphasizes the power of proactive preparation.
It quotes Alan Lakin, who said, "Planning is bringing the future into the present so you can do something about it now."
So true. Planning is essentially about taking control of your time and your tasks rather than letting them control you.
Right. Instead of being reactive and just responding to whatever comes up, you're taking a proactive approach.
It's like the difference between being swept along by a current versus steering your own ship.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
when you plan in advance, you're much more likely to stay focused on your priorities.
You know where you're going and how you're going to get there.
And you're less likely to get sidetracked by those urgent but not important distractions that always seem to pop up.
And the book actually makes a pretty compelling argument for why planning is so beneficial. It says that every minute spent planning can save up to 10 minutes in execution.
10 minutes. So for every minute you invest in planning, you're essentially gaining 10 minutes of productivity.
Wow, that's huge. So even if you only spend 15 minutes planning your day.
You're potentially saving yourself 2.5 hours of work.
Now, the book also introduces what it calls the 6P formula.
Proper prior planning prevents poor performance.
Proper prior planning prevents poor performance. Catchy.
Right. It's a good reminder that taking the time to plan things out can really make a difference.
It can help you avoid mistakes, reduce stress, and ultimately get better results. And when it comes to planning, the book advocates for working with lists.
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 They're simple but effective.
They are, and the book suggests a hierarchy of lists. You start with a master list for all your long-term goals and aspirations. Then you break that down into monthly lists, weekly lists, and then finally a daily list of specific tasks.
And the daily list is really the key. It's the roadmap for your day.
It is. It tells you exactly what you need to get done and when. Now, here's a great tip. Make your daily to-do list the night before. Oh, this is such a good practice. It is, because it allows your subconscious mind to work on those tasks while you sleep. You might wake up with new ideas or solutions.
You'll also find that your mornings go much smoother when you already have a plan in place. You're not wasting time trying to figure out what to do first.
It's like having your day prepped and ready to go. And to really reinforce this idea of planning, the book highlights something called the 10-90 rule.
Ah, yes, the 10-90 rule. The first 10% of time you spend planning a project
Will save you 90% of the time in execution.
It's amazing how much time and effort you can save by simply taking a little time to plan things out in advance.
And to put this into practice, the book recommends another really helpful exercise. Make a deliberate effort to plan out your day, your week, and your month in advance.
Specifically, write down everything you need to do in the next 24 hours.
Then create a list of all your ongoing projects.
And then finally, lay out your major goals and related tasks, considering both their priority and the sequence in which they need to be addressed.
It's all about getting it out of your head and onto paper so you can see it clearly.
Now let's talk about the 80-20 rule.
The 80-20 rule. This is a game changer.
It really is. It's also known as the Pareto principle. And it basically states that roughly 20% of your activities will produce 80% of your results.
So what does that mean in practical terms?
It means that within your to-do list, there are a handful of tasks that are significantly more valuable than all the others.
And those are the tasks that you really want to focus on.
Right. Because those are the tasks that will have the biggest impact on your goals.
And chances are your biggest frog, that most important and maybe most dreaded task, is lurking somewhere in that top 20%.
It often is.
And what's really interesting is that we often tend to procrastinate on those most valuable tasks. We put them off because they're difficult or challenging, and we gravitate towards the easier, less important tasks instead.
It's human nature, isn't it? We tend to seek comfort and avoid discomfort.
We do. But if we want to be truly productive, we need to resist that urge. We need to focus on the high-value tasks, even if they're not the most enjoyable ones.
And the book really emphasizes the importance of saying no to those low-value activities.
Especially when there are still high-value tasks left undone.
Right. It's about being ruthless with your time and your energy.
And remember, tackling those tough tasks first builds momentum and creates a sense of accomplishment that fuels you to keep going.
It sets the tone for the rest of the day.
Exactly. So to really put the 80-20 rule into practice, the book recommends taking a close look at your key goals, your regular activities, your ongoing projects, and your core responsibilities.
And then identify which of those fall into that top 10-20% that will have the biggest impact on your results.
And once you've identified those high-value activities, make a conscious effort to prioritize them.
Spend more time and energy on those tasks and less time on everything else.
Now, Chapter 4 introduces a really important concept, considering the consequences. This is all about understanding the potential impact of your actions or inaction.
It's about recognizing that every task, every decision, has consequences that ripple outward.
And the book argues that the true importance of a task is directly related to its potential consequences.
Both positive and negative.
Right. So if a task has the potential to have a huge positive impact on your life,
Or a huge negative impact if it's not done well.
then it's clearly a very important task.
Exactly. And the book draws a really interesting contrast between how successful people think about consequences versus those who are less successful.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Well, successful people tend to focus on long-term consequences. They're willing to delay gratification and make short-term sacrifices in order to achieve those long-term goals.
You're playing the long game.
Exactly. Whereas
Yeah.
people who are less successful tend to focus on short-term pleasure or comfort.
They might avoid difficult tasks or decisions because they don't want to experience the discomfort in the moment.
Right. Even though those choices might have negative consequences down the road.
And there's a great quote from Dennis Waitley in the book that illustrates this perfectly. He says, "Unsuccessful people major in minor things,
They get caught up in those low-value tasks that provide immediate gratification.
but that don't really contribute to their long-term goals."
Exactly.
So the key takeaway here is to really think about the potential consequences of your actions, both positive and negative, and use that as a guide for prioritization.
If a task has the potential to have a huge positive impact on your life, prioritize it, even if it's difficult or unpleasant.
And if a task has the potential to have a huge negative impact if it's not done well.
Tackle that one head on as well.
Now, this chapter also introduces a principle called the law of forced efficiency.
Which is all about recognizing the reality of limited time and resources.
There's never enough time to do everything,
Never.
but there's always enough time to do the most important things.
And this law really challenges that idea of working better under pressure.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, myself included, sometimes fall into that trap.
It's easy to tell yourself, oh, I work better under pressure.
But the reality is that when we're under pressure, we're more likely to make mistakes.
We're more stressed, we're less creative, and the quality of our work often suffers.
And that's why it's so important to prioritize those high-value tasks and tackle them early on, rather than waiting until the last minute and then rushing to get them done.
Exactly. And to help you stay focused on the most important things, the book presents 3 key questions.
Ooh, I love a good set of questions.
Me too. So the first question is, what are my highest value activities?
In other words, what are the things that, if you did them exceptionally well, would have the biggest positive impact on your life or your work?
Right. And the second question is, what can I, and only I do that, if done well, will make a real difference?
That's a great question, because it forces you to think about your unique strengths and contributions.
It helps you identify those tasks that only you can do and that will have a significant impact.
And finally, the third question is, what is the most valuable use of my time right now?
This is all about being present and focused on the task at hand.
So taking a moment to really ask yourself those 3 questions.
Can help you stay on track and make sure you're always working on the most important things.
Absolutely. And to put this into practice, the book recommends regularly reviewing your task list and asking yourself which project or activity, if completed excellently and on time, would have the greatest positive consequences.
And then discipline yourself to focus your energy on that one thing during each working hour.
It's about making a conscious choice to work on the most important thing rather than getting distracted by all the other things that are clamoring for your attention.
Now, as we wrap up this deep dive into Brian Tracy's Eat That Frog, let's recap some of the key takeaways.
Yeah, let's summarize what we've learned.
So first and foremost, it's all about identifying and tackling your most important task first thing.
Eat that frog.
Exactly. And it's not just a one-time thing. It's about cultivating a habit of prioritizing and taking action.
It's about developing that bias for action that we talked about earlier.
Right. And remember, these habits can be learned. They're not just innate talents.
Anyone can become a frog eater.
Exactly. And we also talked about the importance of clarity.
Of setting clear goals, both personally and professionally.
And using those goals as a guide for your actions.
And then there's the power of planning.
Planning every day in advance.
Making those to-do lists and using them to stay focused and on track.
And of course, there's the 80-20 rule.
Ah, yes, the 80-20 rule. Identifying those high-value activities and making sure you're spending your time and energy on the things that will actually move the needle.
And finally, always consider the consequences of your actions.
Both positive and negative.
And use that as a guide for prioritizing your tasks.
Now, as a concrete next step for you, our listeners, we encourage you to take a moment right now to think about what your biggest frog is for tomorrow.
What's that one task that, if you got it done, would make the biggest positive difference in your life or your work?
Write it down. And make a commitment to yourself to tackle it first thing in the morning.
You might also want to try that goal-setting exercise we talked about earlier. Write down 3 goals you want to achieve in the next month, framing them in the present tense using positive language, and writing them from your own perspective.
It's a great way to get clarity on what you want and start building momentum towards achieving it.
Now, here's a final thought to leave you with. Think about what it would feel like to consistently take control of your time, your tasks, and your priorities.
To be able to confidently tackle those big, important tasks, knowing that you have the skills and the strategies to get them done.
To feel less overwhelmed, less stressed, and more in control of your day.
That's the power of eating the frog. It's not just about getting more things done. It's about living a more fulfilling and productive life.
And it's a journey, a process of continuous learning and improvement.
And remember, every time you eat that frog, you're not only getting closer to your goals, you're also reinforcing those positive habits that will help you achieve even greater success in the future.
So keep practicing, keep learning, and keep eating those frogs.
And that's a wrap for this deep dive.
Until next time.
Take care.